everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, we all want to learn quickly and efficiently, right? But without feeling like we're drowning in information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, today we're going to tackle something that I think a lot of English learners struggle with, especially you guys out there who are trying to get to that next level.
Yeah.
We're talking about why learning tons of vocab words and isolated sentences often doesn't translate into real fluency. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can memorize all day long, but
It doesn't stick.
it just doesn't stick, yeah. So in this deep dive, we're going to figure out why context is so important for actually learning English effectively. And then we'll talk about how you can approach it in a way that actually works for you.
So many learners start out thinking, okay, I'm going to memorize all these words and phrases.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, right, at the beginning.
Seems logical.
That seems like the most straightforward way to learn.
Yeah.
But there's a big problem with that, especially once you try to move beyond that beginner level.
Yeah, exactly. Because language doesn't exist in isolation.
Right.
It's all about the connections between words.
Like how they work together.
Exactly, how they work together.
Yeah.
So even if you know the definition of, let's say, 100 different words, if you don't understand how those words actually function within a sentence or within a larger context.
It's kind of like having all these puzzle pieces but not knowing how they fit together.
Yeah, perfect analogy. You've got all these pieces, but you can't actually make a picture.
Exactly.
Right.
Certain verbs, for example, they naturally go with certain nouns. You know, you have these verb-object combinations.
Right.
Or adverb-verb pairings, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to native speakers, those just sound right. They sound natural. But if you're just learning words in isolation, you're missing out on all those vital interactions.
Totally. And that's why it can sound a little awkward or a little off sometimes when you're speaking, even if you technically know the words.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this leads to another really common experience for English learners. Have you ever felt like you know a word, you've studied it, you've seen it, you recognize it, but then when you try to use it in conversation, you kind of hesitate.
You freeze up a little bit.
Yeah. You freeze up. You're like, wait, does this sound right? And you kind of second guess yourself.
Because your brain hasn't fully internalized that word without that contextual exposure.
It's like it's in your passive vocabulary, but not your active vocabulary.
Right. And the source explains that when you encounter a word over and over again, but in similar emotional or situational contexts, your brain builds stronger connections.
Right. It starts to make sense.
It's like, let's say you keep hearing the word relieved in situations where someone has overcome a challenge, right?
Okay.
So when you find yourself in a similar situation,
Oh, I get it.
the word relieved is more likely to come to mind.
It feels more natural.
And it feels more natural to use. It's
Yeah.
that feeling of, oh, yeah, this is exactly the kind of situation where that word was used.
It clicks.
Yeah, it clicks.
I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that for many people, learning English feels like this separate thing.
This chore.
Yeah, it feels like a chore, you know?
Right.
And you're forcing yourself to go through these textbooks or these like really dry educational materials.
Right.
But it's not really connected to your life, to your interests, or to the things you actually care about.
And that's not sustainable.
No, especially not for busy people.
Especially if you have limited time, yeah.
Right. You have a job, you have family, you have other things going on. You can't spend all day, every day, just drilling vocabulary.
Right.
What's the solution?
The key is to find content that's either genuinely enjoyable for you
Okay.
or personally meaningful.
So stuff that you're actually interested in.
Exactly. It has to resonate with you on some level.
Right. So instead of forcing yourself to do grammar exercises, you could be like watching a documentary about a topic that you're passionate about.
Or reading a novel by an author that you love.
Or listening to a podcast like this one.
Exactly.
Right.
And the learning becomes this natural byproduct.
It just happens organically.
Yeah, because you're engaged with something that you actually care about.
And this ties into what? Internalization.
That deep understanding that leads to confidence and fluency.
Right. You're not just memorizing words, you're actually understanding how to use them.
Yeah, and the source highlights how that happens through real-world exposure.
It's about immersing yourself in authentic English content.
where the vocabulary, the grammar, even the tone, it all comes together.
It all clicks.
It clicks, yeah.
So the big takeaway here is ditch the isolated words and sentences.
Right. Get out there and experience the language.
Exactly. Engage with content that you actually enjoy.
Yeah. It's about shifting your focus from just memorizing
Right.
to actively engaging with the language.
Actively engaging. So let's leave you with this. Think about how you're currently learning English. Are you focusing on context, on things you're genuinely interested in? Or are you getting bogged down in isolated bits of information? Because shifting your approach can make a huge difference in your progress.
It can make it more enjoyable, too.
Way more enjoyable. And who doesn't want that? All right. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Thanks for listening.